What's up, everybody? My name is Scott Waters, and this is
TROG, man.
TROG. It's funny, whenever I mention you in a video, it's always TROG. I don't know where that came from.
That actually that goes back to my '87 college years.
Uh-huh.
We had a thing, me and a friend. We'd always look for words with that short O and just exaggerate it, like sausage or tampon. And it was just a stupid thing that we did during the semester I was there.
Right on. Oh, anyhow, so we were doing a video. I forgot.
1977, man.
1977. So I have done a 77 video before, which I will link to here, but it was just me.
Right. We decided to redo all the 70s once we started working together, which is cool because 70s are my era.
And I love the 70s too, as you guys know. And the thing is, it's going to be a very different list for two reasons. One is because now it's the two of us trying to get it together, which it's always tough because we have things both we like. And
we overcame it for this one, though. We did come up with a mutual top 10.
yes, we did.
But it was a tough year.
We usually do. We usually come up with a top 10. But
yeah. I mean, we didn't for 87, which hasn't happened yet because this is 1977.
Yes.
What's wrong with you, Trog? Are you crazy?
But the one thing that we do, if you look at my old 77 video, you're going to notice a lot. Some of the same ones are in here.
Yeah.
Different orders. Even for me, since then, I've changed. And I've found more stuff I like that I didn't even know about.
Yep.
Matter of fact, a couple that are in here, I couldn't even tell you anything about them 3-4 years ago when I did that video. So
this was a tough list for me for some reason. None of the albums really jumped out incredibly like, oh yeah, for sure. I mean, other than the fact they came out in 77, I mean, there's plenty of stuff I liked, but it seems like the other ones have been easier. This one was a tough list for me to come up with on my own.
And we did cut some stuff out of this list. We had probably about 50, and now we're down to about 30.
You think?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I cut out a bunch of things that I probably would have liked to have had. Like there's no Max Webster on here. Funny is, we just now threw one back in the list that was on there, and we took it off. And I'm like, we don't have anything of this band on there. He's like, I have one of their albums. I'm like, oh,
Status Quo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's the only album I have from them on vinyl.
Anyhow, enough of that. Let's get into it. Bottom of the list, not because I don't like it or I think it's crap. I actually love this record.
Hell no, you love this guy.
Canadian guitar rock legend, Pat Travers.
Great cover.
Oh, I love this cover. I mean, I remember buying this record. It's the front cover mixed with the back cover. I mean, it's just such an explanation of what's going on here. It's just bombastic, heavy rock from Canada.
And it's so 70s.
It's so 70s.
You couldn't get away with this today.
Yeah. Anyhow, I love this record. It's just, now if you look at my 1978 video, I did a 1978 top Canadian albums, and Pat Travers made it to #1.
He's Canuck?
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yep. And but this album, which preceded that album, this is his third album. It's just, like I said, great heavy rock. And so, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Nico McBrain was the drummer on here, I believe.
No way.
Nico McBain.
I think wasn't he originally Nico McBain?
Yeah.
He changed his name to Brain because of Peace of Mind.
Oh,
I thought sure that was the case. And
let me double check it. Let's see if it's in here or not. Yep, Nico McBrain.
Oh.
There he is.
No way! I didn't know. I knew he played with Trust. I didn't know he played with Pat Travers.
And then, of course, Mars Crawling, who recently passed away, was on here as well. Yeah, this is the original picture sleeve.
Oh, that's freaking awesome.
I love those old black and white photos of shredding like that.
What's
okay, track listing.
Album?
Track listing, where is it?
Right down that.
There it is. Life in London, great song. Getting better. Try it again. Running with the Future. It Ain't What It Seems. Offbeat Ride. Loving You. Dedication and Speak Easy. Not a hit on there. It's
I don't know any of those songs.
It's because it wasn't a hit album, but it's just great, heavy, and I think it's one of the reasons I like it so much. A lot of the 70s records I love. Like I said, I loved it when the first Boston came out, and years after, I still loved it. Listening to that album now, it's just like, I've heard it a million times.
Yeah, and everything's a friggin' hit on it.
Yeah.
Everything got super airplay.
Right, and that's not the case with this album. It's just a great 70s heavy album. So,
yep.
Pat Travers, putting it straight. What do you got next?
All right. This band had 2 albums this year. Remember that in the 70s? Bands would put out 2, sometimes 3
in the same
albums a year.
Yep.
Remember that crap?
We got a couple of them this time.
Yeah. These are basically the same album. Well, I've just got 2 versions. One's a gatefold, one's regular. URIAH, HEEP, FIREFLY. This holds the distinction. Excuse me, I'm getting whiplash from my burps. this album holds the distinction of being the first. It's Uriah Heep's 8th studio album, and it holds the distinction of being the first one without David Byron. He was gone. They brought in John Lawton, who was a vocalist for Lucifer's Friend, and this is the Firefly album. My two top tracks on this are The Hanging Tree and Wise Man. It's a good album.
It's a great cover.
It's still, it's definitely it's a departure for the usual Heep.
Not as heavy.
Yeah.
It was a lighter sound.
Yeah, some of Heep's catalog gets a little spotty in places. I feel the same way about Nazareth. They have a lot of material out there, but not every. Sometimes you got to dig through it. So yeah, this was the first album for that year. Should I just do the second one along?
Yeah, we'll
with
do them both because I'm gonna do the
All
same
right.
thing with the other bands.
So second album, 77. This is another two different covers. I'm not sure if one's American, one's UK.
It's exactly what it is.
Yeah, Innocent Victim. John Lawton is still in place on this one. I'm not as familiar with this one, to be honest. So I can't really speak too much of the track list, but 2 albums in a year, who does that anymore?
Similar sounds. Both
Yeah.
albums had a very similar sound. I mean, it was pretty much the same lineup, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
Was John Wetton singing on there?
No, Wetton was on the 2 albums prior,
Okay.
High and Mighty and Return to Fantasy.
Right. And Wetton went on to be with
Well,
Asia.
King Crimson too.
Crimson, yeah.
I think he was with Crimson before he joined Heep.
And then he formed Asia.
Yeah.
Yeah. With Steve Howe.
We get Mick Box, obviously, he's the mainstay, he's never left. John Lawton, Ken Hensley, Lee Kearslake, and Trevor Boulder. And of course, they're not going to give me a band. I'm gonna just take a chance to say, yeah, it was the same band.
Anyhow, very similar sound, very similar style.
But I mean, it's still, the thing I'm stuck on is 2 albums in a year.
Yep.
From a high-profile band. I
Yep.
mean, Kiss did stuff like that. Sabbath did stuff like that.
Cheap Trick.
In the early days. Cheap Trick did. Aerosmith did, I'm pretty sure.
No, they never did.
Not 2 in the same year?
They were slow album makers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's
there was
just...
a lot of bands that did, though.
I mean, now you'll go 5 years between albums, maybe more. Or you got Tool. It's been 12 years since their last album, but that's a different story.
But the other thing is albums were shorter. I mean, it was
Right.
8 songs. Now an album is considered, 12, 13,
Right.
14 tracks.
And, maybe the quality wasn't quite as good when you got 2-3 albums a year, but maybe you didn't expect as much back in the 70s. I don't know.
All right, next up is one that I discovered between the last video and now. So in the last 4 years, this is GODDO.
Never heard of them.
I got into such a huge Canadian rock kick for quite a while. And I was discovering all these killer bands that I knew little or nothing about. GODDO being one of them. A big band in Canada, never heard of them here. These guys were just pure guitar-driven, heavy rock and roll, but they had this almost, let me see if I can think of it. If there ever was a precursor to the bands like Faster Pussycat and Guns N' Roses and all that kind of
Seriously?
sleazy, that kind of sleazy vibe, this has kind of got that sound going on.
So this is pre-Hanoi Rocks too,
Oh,
I'm going
yeah.
to say?
Yeah, it's kind of, but it's heavy. It's guitar heavy. It's all Mark. What's his name? The guitar player Godovitz. Mark Godovitz. Greg Godovitz.
Oh, now I see where the name came from.
Right. Yeah, he's a vocalist. Who's
But
a
they're
guitar
not
player?
they're not all glammed out though.
No.
But
Definitely
the sound.
not. But the sound is just, it's got, and I'm not saying this is pop at all. This is not pop. It's just got that sleazy vibe to it. I don't know how else to say it. But yeah, this is
Just like that blues drenched kind of,
but
more rock and roll.
even in like the delivery where it's kind of like, it's all kind of sexualized kind of thing.
Swagger,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, just a great album. And I had to cut quite a few Canadian artists that I had on my list out. And it was the last ones I was trying to choose between Max Webster and this one. I went with this because I think this is just a fantastic debut album from GODDO. And yeah, what was the guitar player's name? That's the one thing I can't remember. Gino Scarpelli. I don't know how I forgot that name, but yeah. Anyhow, if you've never heard of GODDO and you're into
So they're from Canada, but Scarpelli sounds awfully Italian.
yeah, it does. So if you're into, 70s heavy rock and roll, hard and heavy, check GODDO out. So
Definitely, that sounds interesting.
yeah, very good. And they released like 6 albums right up through the early 80s.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, is that their first?
That is their first.
Cool. Self-titled?
Self-titled on Poly. It's actually on two labels. It's on Fat Cat, which was a Canadian label,
Oh, okay.
but it was Polydor.
It's got a big volcano on the front erupting.
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
Goddo kind of sounds like Godzilla. Maybe that's where they got that.
All right. Yeah, this is an odd one. Only released in Japan.
It's so weird. It's still never been officially released.
I think that's Kevin DuBro's doing. He hated it. He hated both these first two albums, Quiet Riot with Randy Rhoads. This is the self-titled. Of the two that they did, Quiet Riot 1 and Quiet Riot 2, I prefer the second one as a whole. I actually really like that album. This one's a bit tougher.
They were a huge band out there in California, though.
Them and Van Halen were like, they were competitors, at this point in the clubs.
Right.
And like Randy and Eddie Van Halen was like the two guitar heroes. And this is a weird album. It's a bit goofy. There's a couple of cool parts on it. Like they do a cover of Small Faces' Tin Soldier, which Kevin DuBro's a huge Steve Marriott fan, I found out later, which makes total sense. God.
Yeah.
Glad All Over, they do the Dave Clark 5 cover as well.
Which I love that song.
Yeah, there's just a quality of this album. It's just there's an innocence, but there's also kind of there's just a goofy quality.
To me, it's their rock and roll album. You know what I mean?
But it's not as good as rock.
No, it's not as good as rock and roll, but
it doesn't have an edge. Maybe that's what I'm looking at. The cover's brilliant. It's
or like
a beautiful
it's
cover.
Much different like the early UFO or the early Accept. It's just different.
Yeah, it's got a weird pop edge to it, I guess, that I wasn't really expecting. It's got its moments. Once in a while, I like to throw it on. It's just a cool listen for nostalgia. I was a huge Randy Rhoads fan in high school, and I was dying to find these. I finally found a real copy. Quiet Riot, self-titled first one. And I always thought it was funny. The Quiet Riot logo was in a triangle, much like the Van Halen logo was.
Yep.
They both had a self-titled first and second album. Mm-hmm. Same thing. So it's like they were
and two guys from that band are gone, right? From that lineup?
Yeah, Kevin DuBro and Randy Rhoads. I don't know about Kelly Garney or Drew Forsythe. I don't know if they're still kicking or not.
I'm pretty sure they're still kicking.
Yeah, I haven't heard any. I didn't hear much about them after Quiet Riot.
All right, my next one up is this one wasn't on your list, huh? At all?
No, I never really until the live one. I never really get into
this band is one that they released two albums in the same year. They just like what did we just show?
URIAH HEEP.
Right here, but here you can hold that one. I'll do this one. Cheap Trick.
Mm-hmm.
Weird band, especially
Very
back then.
band.
So you got the two heartthrob guys in the band. You got Tom Peterson
on bass and Robin Zander.
Robin Zander, who were on the front cover of their second album. This being in color.
Who still has one of the best rock and roll voices of all time.
The guy can sing, man.
Yeah, he's got a wicked voice.
Then you got the accountant in the back, Bunny Carlos. But it was
and the total nerd bomb guitar player.
And then you got the original Pee Wee Herman. I mean, he was Pee Wee Herman before Pee Wee Herman.
But what a great guitar player!
Oh my goodness, he's just freaking awesome.
Yeah.
So anyhow, love the first three albums. In my opinion, for Cheap Trick, are there. If you only had 3 albums to get by Cheap Trick, it would be those 3 albums.
I'd have to disagree on that one.
Well, then I love Dream Police as well, and I love the live album that they did.
Yeah.
But I'm talking studio albums. Those 3 just go together.
Well, Dream Police is studio.
Yeah.
Dream Police was the first one I got turned on to after the live.
And I
never heard
the Cheap Trick
these
catalog,
until later.
But this album here, they never did an album quite this raw and heavy. Very different from the next album. This was produced by Jack Douglas, who at the time, of course, was working with Aerosmith. So there's kind of a similar rawness to the sound, to the production, like you got with Rocks. And
there's been a recent alternate version of this released by, I want to say, is it Steve Albini mixes? I might have the mix guy wrong. But later on, they reduced as like some bonus material.
Yeah. Different
mixes of the albums and as a whole.
But both these albums are, I mean, they still play a lot of these songs live, but...
What was the third one? Heaven Tonight?
Heaven Tonight.
And that's when they had Surrender, which was probably their first huge song.
Until the live album came out.
Until
and then,
I Want You to Want Me,
which was actually on this album.
Yeah.
The studio
version. But I don't like the studio version.
And then Big Eyes is on here, that was another classic. Clock Strikes 10, that was another killer.
Yeah, I love the versions that are on Budokan so much more than this, which was kind of a symptom of the 70s in a long way.
Yeah,
A lot
there
of
was.
this-
Thin Lizzy,
Yeah,
Kiss, even Judas Priest. There was just
Deep Purple, all those
Yeah.
guys.
But yeah, I love the live. Matter of fact, I've got to confess, it was the live album that got me into Cheap Trick.
Oh,
and then
sure.
Dream Police was my next buy, and then I got into these after the fact.
Yeah.
But
I got them, and then going back to listening to some of the versions that I loved on the live album, I was sort of disappointed. First time I heard the studio version of I Want You to Want Me, I was like, this doesn't have nearly the energy that the other one did.
and I don't think they ever quite kind of captured that live, that energy they had on,
Yeah.
that they, except on other studio live albums, but they never captured it in the studio. I think everybody expected Dream Police to have that heavy edge when it came out, and it just didn't. But it's a great
But
album.
the edge that it did have was friggin',
Yeah.
it was infectious.
And,
And my favorite Cheap Trick tune of all time is
He's a whore.
Stop the Music. Can't Stop the Music, or what? I can't remember the exact title, but it's my favorite song of all time, whatever that song is. Well, I can't stop this game.
There you
That's
go.
what it's called.
It's just something about the camera turning on you, just like, like,
I like rock and roll. Gary Glitter.
anyhow, this album had another classic song on it too. The first album that Anthrax covered, He's a Whore.
Oh, I didn't know Anthrax covered that.
Yeah, great song. Anyhow, Cheap Trick, 77,
Great stuff.
2 albums. Like I said, this one's a little more raw and heavy. This one's a little more clean. This one's got more hits on it, more songs you would know than this one, but I love them both.
Cool.
You're
All
up.
right. Status Quo live set from 77. Only one I have on vinyl. I have some other stuff digitally, but cool band. Straight up hard rock and roll.
Yep.
Mainstay in the UK for years.
Not to offend the Status Quo fans, but to me, I kind of put them in the same category as Foghat, kind of that boogie rock sound.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. My favorite cut on here, the first cut I ever heard, it was the live version on. Remember that Live and Heavy sampler that came out on, or not sampler, but compilation? Roll Over Lay Down. That's the song that made me fall in love with the sound of this band.
This album is it kind of has a sound not unlike Live and Dangerous in that it's got that raw, heavy energy. Or Double Live Gonzo, that's another good example.
Brother.
It's just got that oomph, that energy that you can't capture in a studio.
And you know, it's got Quo standards on here. They do a cover of Roadhouse Blues by the Doors. Big Fat Mama's on here.
Everybody covered Roadhouse Blues.
So yeah, Status Quo live set from 77.
And I love the back cover picture too. It's just I don't know. There's something about those stage shots with the smoke and it's just,
Yeah, definitely cool stuff. And it's just called Live.
and it's a
Quo
weird.
Live.
It's a weird. Status Quo's an odd band because I know we're in the U.S. I know in Europe they're just like huge. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Whereas
They're huge.
Yeah.
Huge. They're huge.
Yeah. Just for here, not really. People just aren't into them here. I don't know why.
It's just weird.
Anyhow, I'm up next.
Yep.
This would be STARZ. They came back to a raw, heavier, more guitar, rock and sound. These guys could play. These guys were real musicians. I remember reading stories about what's the guitar player's name? It's not coming to me. Richie Reno, talking about how a lot of bands in the '70s where they'd bring in other guitar players to play their parts on records. I mean, even a band, Aerosmith.
Yeah.
I mean,
Did they?
Yeah.
I think a lot more bands did it than we know.
And it wasn't necessarily the bands that were doing it or were wanting it, that's for sure. It was producers. Train Kept Rolling, the guitar solo on there is not Joe Perry or Brad Whitford.
No shit. I didn't know that.
And I remember Richie Reno complaining about stuff like that, saying, all the parts on our records, I played them all. And I could see why he'd be pissed. And he said, but these bands who've got other studio musicians playing their crap, they're the ones who are getting big. And frankly, for me, STARZ, I think, gave up too easy. I think if STARZ would have stuck it out and went into the 80s and kept being STARZ, I think that they might have
been huge.
Huge, because they had the look, the sound, the logo that became huge in the 80s.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just kind of disappeared. They fractured off, and they changed their name, and then the singer anyhow.
Changed their name to what?
And you're going to ask me that, and I can't think of it. I have it too.
All right.
STARZ became Hellcats. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
But anyhow, great album from them. I think it's probably my favorite right up there with their first album. But again, these guys have a lot of live material out too, like especially some of the live. They have live promo albums out. And their live material, I think, is better than the studio material.
Cool.
Again, it gets that energy, that heaviness, that rawness that you didn't get in the '70s studio recordings.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Blue Oyster Cult '77 Spectres. I love this record. It's
Very different.
it is different.
Very different.
Well, I think the first 3 albums were just this triumvirate that was awesome.
They were very dark, and they were what people called heavy metal at the time. They were.
Right.
They were almost the definition of what heavy metal
Yeah,
was.
and it took me a long time to get into the earlier Blue Oyster Cult.
And I love those.
Now I
records.
freaking love them.
Yeah.
If I'm going to listen to some Cult, I'm going to those first 3, especially Secret Treaties.
Or
Love
Some
that.
Enchanted Evening. I love that record.
Yeah.
Anyhow, go ahead.
So Spectres had the massive hit Godzilla, which I think, if I remember right, was the very first Cult song I ever heard. I think I heard it. My dad had a tape of it or something. And it's like, a song about Godzilla? That's awesome!
Oh, Godzilla.
Yeah. But it's track 2 that is my all-time favorite. Maybe my favorite Blue Oyster Cult song, period, which is Golden Age of Leather. Love that friggin'
That's a great
song.
song.
It's just about this apocalyptic event that all these old bikers planned, and they're gonna drink, fight, and fuck, basically. They just kill each other, and it's just this massive. It's awesome. It's such a great song, and the thing that's funny about it is there's these vocal parts in it that are totally reminiscent of the Beach Boys, and that always took me by surprise. But it's just lush.
And that's what I was going to say about this album as a whole. It doesn't have quite the same darkness and heaviness as the first 3. And I always say that this is the mellowest. Not mellow is a bad word for it, but the mellowest of the Blue Oyster Cult catalog.
Yeah, this or maybe like Mirrors.
Maybe Mirrors. Yeah.
Mirrors too. But it's definitely a cool stuff, and it's still got the.
And I remember, I
kind
love
of
the
mystical
cover.
cover.
I remember seeing that cover in Hit Parader and Cream back in the '70s and loving it. And the back cover is just as cool.
Yep. And I know that the Kronos cross appears on every album, and this one I don't recall where it is. I know it's on the picture sleeve on the inside, but I want to say that it's hidden somewhere on the front. I can't remember offhand though. That's always something I liked about them. It's always like bands that have little tricks like that they would do.
The cover art, yeah.
Yep.
Now this next band, another Canadian band.
Oh yeah, very Canadian.
This one was kind of on both of our lists, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But this is, let's see if I can get the right cover up there first. All right, we'll do this one first. Rock and Roll Machine.
Yeah. And there's a third cover.
Yeah, there's another cover here.
That's my favorite one.
And I think that's a great cover. It's explosive.
It
But this is, as I recall, this is the original Canadian cover.
Yep.
This is another Canadian cover.
I think that this one was actually that one with the stage shot was actually the last one, I believe.
Yep. And then this one here, which is was only released in Canada as well on Attic Records, which is the silver vinyl one, which actually is silver. I guess this one's never been played. It was given to me by John, Captain Howdy John. And I guess the problem with them is after you start playing or touching them, the silver starts flaking off.
Oh, that. Got 5 other versions I can play.
Exactly.
Including the CD.
But anyhow, this is before all the big hits. There was no big hits on this one.
The only memorable track for me on this one, well, besides the title track, was Rocky Mountain Way, their cover of the Joe Walsh cut.
And this is actually the U.S. version, the U.S. cover,
Yep.
which is
on
actually
MCA
a
Records.
different track listing than the Canadian version, and actually is a mixture of the first 2 albums from Triumph, and was the...
Oh, the self-titled? Well, sometimes self-titled, sometimes called In the Beginning, I believe.
Yeah, and this was the first release for them in the U.S.
Oh, okay.
So they took mostly the songs from Rock and Roll Machine, and there's 1 or 2 songs, I can't remember which one it is, from the first album, and that's what the
All
American
right, so
version
let's
is.
see the track listing.
So
of the Canadian
I'm
one.
pretty sure that Little Texas Shaker's missing.
What's it called?
Little Texas Shaker.
Yeah, it's not on here. We got Takes Time,
Yep, same zone here.
Bringing It On Home,
Yep, same one.
Rocky Mountain Way,
Rocky Mountain Way is on the
Side
B side
two.
of this one.
Street Fighter,
Street Fighter is not on here. That was off their first album.
Street Fighter Reprise. Okay, yep. 24 Hours a Day.
That's off their first album.
Blinding Light Show, Moonshot, that's off the first one. And then Rock and Roll Machine.
Rock and Roll Machine.
So, yeah, it's a bit different.
Yeah. And yeah, both great though.
Yeah.
When it comes to Triumph, I really think their next album after this one, what was it called? Just a Game?
Yes. Oh, that's where they really started.
They
showing us
found
what
their
they could do.
sound. Yeah, and
The
that.
first couple albums were a little harder to get into.
I like them now a lot, but it was more basic rock and roll.
Yeah.
It was, it wasn't.
And I forget about Triumph all the time, and I love them. But I'm thinking about what Canadian bands I like, and I always forget about Triumph.
First one always comes to mind, of course, is like Rush.
Yeah, and I think Triumph is similar to Rush, and not nearly as progressive as Rush, but the three-piece with the the lead singer with a very high tenor voice, that kind of thing. But I just forget about him for some reason.
And I'll hear one like on the radio. Somebody's playing the radio at work, and I'll hear like, whatever, Fight the Good Fight or whatever song comes on the radio. I'm like, oh, I love them. I haven't heard them in a while.
Yes, yes.
Anyhow.
And then albums like Allied Forces and Never Surrender, those are friggin' classics.
So that's the only reason that one actually didn't make our top. What are we doing? Top 15 this time, right?
No, just top 10.
Top 10.
Yeah. But we each have an extra 10 or we have an extra 20 outside of that. All right. Yeah, this is a weird release.
Very weird.
It had a big hit, but a very weird release for Alice Cooper, the solo artist. He had huge success with Welcome My Nightmare in '75, his first album on his own.
Yep.
And then
Go to Hell.
Go to Hell.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one. This would be the last one that he put out before really admitting to his massive alcohol problem.
Right.
Because it was after this that he went into Betty Ford and started on the recovery trail, which...
And then released one of his greatest albums ever.
Oh yeah, From the Inside.
Yep.
But this one, yeah, it's a different one. Alice is kind of portraying himself as like a writer who's writing about a private eye, and he's like playing both parts. It almost seems. Now the album has nothing necessarily to do with that, but there's some good cuts on here. You and Me was a pretty big single.
Yep.
And then we had Road Rats, which is a great song, which he went on to do with Utopia on the Roadie soundtrack, which was shortly after this, I
I
think.
think so too, yeah.
It might have been
78.
Yeah. What's another one on here? My God is a total deep cut on here. Love that cut. This is, Alice Cooper's a Christian, very
Outspoken, yeah.
outspoken Christian. And this is he's the son, his grandfather and father were both preachers. This song, My God, is definitely, it's like a statement of faith for sure, but it's like hidden. It took me years before I found that song. Like, I really dig that song. It's kind of epic.
Yep.
Yeah. Good stuff. It's definitely good Alice Cooper, but it kind of gets forgotten.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking for the creepy, or even the '80s metal Alice Cooper,
it's not like
there.
that.
No,
it's not like that. This
very
is a
different.
very straightforward album. Yeah, it's weird. It's just a weird album for him. And like I said, it just seems to get lost in the shuffle, I think.
Yeah. Now this is, in my opinion, this is a precursor to '80s heavy metal.
I agree.
Riot.
New York hard rock.
Yeah, and they sounded there was so many new wave of British heavy metal bands that sounded like this.
Right.
But it was around the same time. The new
Yeah.
wave of British heavy metal started, 78, 79. This was 77. Thus, I say a precursor to it.
Yeah. They don't fall into that category because, well, mainly they're not British.
Yeah, of course not. But they were popular out there. And you remember I remember seeing the flyers, Motorhead and Riot, and it was like...
Yeah, they played around a lot. They definitely were out there pushing themselves.
But yeah, it had the 70s production, has a 70s sound, but it had a metal sound too. Guy Speranza kind of had that metal look and sound in his vocals. Very, almost David Coverdale-ish at times. It's a great album. I love this album. The first 3 albums are class. Oh, most of their stuff is classic.
So this one, Narita, and Fire Down Under?
Yeah, Fire Down Under. You were thinking the same thing. I was Swords of Tequila, and I have an album called that.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, there's Tokyo Rose is on here, Gypsy Queen, Warrior. That's a great song. Of course,
for me personally, this is their least memorable album.
Yeah.
Just taking the Riot proper catalog as a whole.
Right.
Now
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 they're
they're Riot 5, and it's like a completely different band. I'm not sure what it's all about personally.
It's mostly the last, the guys who played on the very last tour before he died, keeping the new music and the name alive.
Yeah, because once Mark Reale died, I mean, he was the heart and soul
he was it,
of
yeah.
Riot. He was the guy. Like Tony Iommi was Sabbath. No Sabbath, no Tony. Well, I would have said the same thing about Riot. No
Yes.
Riot, no Mark Reale, no Riot.
Which is why they changed the name.
Yeah, but why Riot 5? Is that
I never did understand what the 5 was for.
Is that got something to do with the fifth
and I
line?
haven't even heard people say 5. I've heard people saying Riot V. I don't know if there's a difference, so I don't know.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. I just appreciate the fact that they're keeping the music alive. They don't pretend that they're the original Riot, but at the same time they're keeping that music alive.
Now, are they just playing classic Riot, or are they writing new material?
They have 2 new albums out now,
Okay.
and they're pretty much sticking to the power metal sound of Riot,
Okay.
though, not this
Like
sound.
the Thundersteel kind
Thunder,
of stuff?
exactly.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. So,
Which was a totally different... I
again,
mean, Mark Reale was still involved, but, I mean, they changed singers. Once Guy Speranza left, they got Rhett Forrester, which was the Riot that I fell in love with. That I first heard Restless Breed, and I fell in love with that album. It's still my favorite to this day. Rhett Forrester died not too long after that. He did 2 albums with
I
him.
should say, Mark Reale died not maybe 5 years ago now, or
If
6
that,
years ago.
yeah, if that. But he was definitely he stuck around. The
And
longest.
I always found that I'm using the bass player's name on this album.
Oh, Iommi.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like it wasn't Tony, but Jimmy.
Jimmy Iommi,
Yeah, I always thought that was interesting too. But he was gone after Narita. 'Cause,
Yes.
I mean, I think I keep wanting to call it Swords and Tequila. Fire Down Under.